What's going on, guys? Today I'm changing the format of this Let's Play of Zwei to the Ilvard Insurrection. Now this was brought about by me being an idiot and forgetting to record audio for episode number 4. So I ended up with 50 minutes of footage with no audio whatsoever. I was honestly really upset at first, but I decided to look at the positive and try something new. So instead of showing you guys the full footage with live commentary, I can show you guys the highlights with commentary after the fact. I think this would be much more enjoyable for you guys since you get to see the best parts of the game and also get my more refined thoughts and opinions. Let me know what you guys think. I can either do videos like this one or go back to doing live commentary. Now for this video, I'm going to be summarizing everything that's happened in the first 3 episodes of this LP and then going into episode 4 content. If you've already seen the first 3 episodes of this LP, then skip over to the timer that I've indicated right here. Zwei 2 is an action RPG developed by Nihon Falcom and localized by XSeed games. I initially started playing this game because I'm a huge fan of Falcom's and I thoroughly enjoyed their Ys and Legend of Heroes series. I also really love XSeed games. Their localizations are always incredible and add some witty humor. I find that some localizations sound like they're taken straight out of Google Translate, while others go too far and add some ridiculous jokes that take away all the meaning from the original text. XSeed strikes a perfect balance. Their translations are very faithful, but they sparkle just a little bit of personality onto it. The game takes place on the continent of Grandvalon, which was shaped by 2 goddesses, Aplieste and Espina. 500 years ago, 6 demon lords rose up to take over the world, but they were stopped by House Valence, who were rulers of the Sacred Kingdom. This was called the Great Sorcery War, and it resulted in the decline of both the Sacred Kingdom and the magical powers that they thrived on. The good thing is that although magic is in heavy decline, technology is on the rise with the invention of aeroplanes, which are basically just airplanes. I don't really know why they have a different name for it. The game then cuts to our protagonist Ragna Valentine, a bounty hunter who is doing a delivery job for a man named McCoy. He is soon attacked by this cat named Mont Blanc and a mysterious hooded girl. His aeroplane is shot down, but he is saved at the last minute by a vampire. He wakes up in a town called Arte and he's being taken care of by a doctor named Theo and a mechanic named Miriam. Ragna decides to investigate the site of the plane crash and we finally get a good look at him for the very first time, and lo and behold, he's pretty much a Gurren Lagann character. It turns out that his plane is damaged beyond repair and his package was gone, which was intended for the Arte Museum. He then meets up with the vampire who saved him, who introduces herself as Alwen du Moonbria. That night, Alwen explains to Ragna that when she saved him, they formed a blood contract. Essentially, Ragna is duty-bound to help Alwen with whatever she needs. Alwen goes on to say that she's a princess and that recently she had her castle stolen and her magical abilities taken away. As a result, Ragna must now help Alwen recover her magic powers and take back the castle. I gotta admit, this scene did drag on a little bit for me. I personally felt like I got the point pretty quickly and that the dialogue seemed a little bit extra. However, I was impressed by the fact that there was a lot of voice acting, given that this game is pretty low budget, and the voice acting has been pretty solid so far. After this, I did some exploration of the town of Arte in the continent of Ilvard. I gotta say, I was extremely impressed by the amount of life in this town. The colors were very vibrant and the NPCs had a lot of interesting things to say, very similar to Falcom's Trails series. Some of the highlights include a museum which also doubles as a branch of the Hunter Guild, where I can get rewards as I clear more dungeons and improve my rank. There's also this savage nun who smokes a lot of cigarettes and poked fun at our protagonists. And finally, there was this crazy girl who immediately calls Ragna Prince Charming and becomes obsessed with him. I then left town and went to the closest dungeon, the abandoned Secundum Mines. Upon entry, Alwen says that she detects her magic here. I went on in and got my first taste of gameplay here. I had a ton of fun playing through this dungeon. The gameplay is pretty simple, but I was still enjoying myself regardless. You can use melee attacks with Ragna or magic attacks with Alwen. There are also some good combos and aerial attacks that add a little bit of depth to the game. The other cool thing is that the blood contract comes into play in the gameplay in the sense that Alwen and Ragna share the same HP. Regardless of whether I'm using Alwen or Ragna, my HP remains the same. It was interesting to see a story element come into play as a gameplay mechanic. The dungeon itself was passable, I suppose. It pretty much consisted of branching hallways with the occasional treasure or puzzle. It wasn't particularly interesting, but it also didn't take away from the game. The level up system in this game is fairly unique. You get experience by eating food that enemies drop, and you can eat the food right away to recover some HP and get a small amount of XP, or you could trade in 10 of the same food for a big bonus in XP. At first, I tried to conserve my food so that I can get the big bonus, but eventually, I realized that this dungeon is too much to beat as a level 1, and I ended up eating some of my food to level up. Now, I am aware that this is not the only game to use food as a level up mechanic, but it is uncommon in the genre. The dungeon has a mini boss that I initially skipped. It's found about a quarter of the way through, and a big warning sign is given when it's about to appear. I initially skipped it because I thought that the warning sign meant that I couldn't possibly beat it at my current level. I thought it was one of those super bosses that I couldn't beat until much later in the game. It turns out the warning sign is only there to tell you that there's a mini boss. They are actually quite beatable, which is something I find out a bit later on. Halfway through the dungeon, we meet Odessa, who is a famous bounty hunter. She doesn't say too much other than the fact that she's in Ilvard to look for a specific person and that they are not in the mine. She does say that she found evidence that other people were here though. The only really thing I could say about Odessa at the moment is that she doesn't seem scummy to me and that I'm almost certain she will come into play later. I went on to the end of the dungeon and had a confrontation with Mont Blanc, who once again is the cat who knocked Ragna's aeroplane down. She's holding a fairy by the name of Rue captive, who is Alwen's servant. Ragna and Alwen try to take Mont Blanc down, but she runs away and leaves behind a creature by the name of Arch-Shalab. In the boss battle, I used up all of my healing items, but thankfully, I managed to barely clutch it out. After the battle, Alwen gets her earth magic ability back. She talks about the next steps with Rue and Ragna, and they decide to go to a village to the north, where they detect another fragment of Alwen's magic. And that about sums up the first 3 parts of my LP. After that, I actually returned back to the abandoned Secundum mines because there was a new area that I could visit with Alwen's earth magic. I really like how the earth magic can be used in combat. It's pretty useful to switch between the earth magic and her default spell. I was also very impressed with the amount of additional content. There was a good half hour of gameplay in the bonus dungeon. When I got to the end, I was rewarded with a new ability called Arcana after doing an incredibly awkward dance with a masked man. The abandoned Secundum mines also had another area to access, which featured an interesting bat boss. At first, it was giving me a bit of trouble, but after a while, I started to use Alwen's earth magic and went to town. It was really satisfying since I ended up taking out like 10 enemies at once. At the end of the area, I got rewarded with a relic that I need to show to Miriam to learn more about. I briefly went back to Arte and I quickly realized that the town had changed. The NPCs moved around and they now had new dialogue to say. This was awesome because it really adds life to the town and it's nice to see a bit of follow-up to the earlier conversations. I eventually went north and made my way to Roalta village. This was an interesting town, although not as much as Arte. This is a village of farmers and they have an upcoming harvest festival. The other really cool thing about this town was that there was a man who was asking for pizza. This was literally my best food item, but I decided to give it to him anyways and I was rewarded with Solomon's ring, which allows me to talk to animals. I initially got very excited when I got this item because I thought that this item also appeared in the very first Ys game, but upon doing a little bit more digging, I actually got mixed up with a location called Solomon's Shrine in Ys. I don't believe that this is an Ys reference anymore, but if you do know for sure, leave a comment below. I would love to know. Now, Roalta Village also had a pet shop, and I ended up purchasing a dog that supposedly helps me in combat and levels up on its own. I finished off at Roalta by talking to the village chief, who tells us that there is a shrine nearby. An elder in town also tells us that it's one of the 5 major shrines that the Sacred Kingdom used to pray during their heyday, but that it's now flooded and impossible to use for sacred purposes. Upon entering the shrine, Alwen immediately confirms that another piece of her magic is here, and Alwen and Ragna then meet Pokol, an aspiring treasure hunter, and Pipiro, a human mage. They say that they are from Argus and that they are trying to enter the shrine, but that they have no way of getting access across the flood. When I saw this, I remembered that the first Zwei game is called The Argus Adventure, and I suspected that these two might be protagonists of that game. And after doing a little bit more research, I can confirm that this is in fact true. So that's a nice little cameo. After they leave, Alwen uses her earth magic to create a path to the temple. I'm about halfway through the temple at the moment, and I am having a fairly easy time overall. The only thing that really gave me a challenge was this jellyfish mini-boss, and I still did manage to take it down. The other thing I noticed was that this dungeon was significantly more complex than the first one with more branching paths, so it's nice to see a little bit more of a challenge in that regard. And that's a wrap for my playthrough so far. Overall, I'm really enjoying myself quite a bit, although I do find that some of these story segments drag on a little bit too much. The game is very simplistic, which some people may consider to be a flaw, but I'm having fun with it regardless. And once again, please let me know if you prefer a highlight video like this or the full gameplay with live commentary. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.